the United States has thrown everything at China: tariffs, trade bans, tech restrictions, all in an effort to slow down Beijing's global rise. But here's the big question. Is it working, or is China's momentum simply too strong to stop? From its industrial powerhouse to its vast trade networks, China continues to charge ahead. In this video, we'll break down 10 compelling reasons why the US's economic offensive isn't enough to derail China's ascent. This is a clash of titans that's reshaping the global economy, and we're diving deep into the how and why. If you're into geopolitics, economics, or just love a high-stakes showdown, stick around. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't, and let's jump right in. Things are about to get intense. First up, let's talk about China's industrial dominance, the backbone of why the US can't stop its rise. China is the world's factory, producing 54% of global steel and over 80% of solar panels in 2023 alone. When the US slaps tariffs on Chinese goods, it only drives up prices for Americans, while China simply pivots, selling to Asia, Africa, or Latin America instead. Decades of building supply chains have given China a level of scale and flexibility the US can only dream of. Sure, America is trying to bring manufacturing back home, but progress is slow, hindered by a lack of skilled workers and infrastructure that China has long since mastered. Even tech sanctions, like those targeting Huawei, hurt at first, but China is pouring billions into homegrown solutions. By 2024, its industrial output hit $5 trillion, dwarfing the US's $2.5 trillion. The economic war may dent China's profits, but its factories keep roaring. At this point, it's simply too entrenched to topple. Next up, China's massive domestic market, a total game changer. With 1.4 billion people, China has a built-in customer base that shields it from US economic pressure. Tariffs cutting exports? No problem. Domestic consumption now drives over 60% of China's GDP. Giants like Alibaba and Tencent rake in billions from a middle-class 400 million strong and growing. In 2023 alone, Chinese shoppers spent $2 trillion online, a staggering figure. By comparison, the US, with just 330 million people, relies far more on exports. So when China retaliates with tariffs of its own, America feels the squeeze even harder. Beijing is also pushing policies to boost local spending, think tax cuts and subsidies, to keep the economy humming even under pressure. The US can try to curb China's trade, but its internal market is like a fortress. It's not just about size, it's about resilience. China's rise isn't slowing down because it has the people to sustain it. Reason 3. China's state-driven economy, an unstoppable machine the US can't outmaneuver. The Communist Party calls the shots, setting national goals like tech self-sufficiency and backing them with massive funding and strategic control. When the US bans chips, China doesn't flinch. It pumps $150 billion into its semiconductor industry. Tariffs sting, but Beijing counters with stimulus, $500 billion in 2022 alone, to keep businesses afloat. Meanwhile, the US, tied to free market unpredictability, can't pivot as fast. Private companies hesitate without guaranteed profits, while China's state-owned giants like Sinopec dominate key sectors, ensuring stability even under economic fire. By 2024, China's government directly steered 40% of its GDP, giving it the agility to adapt faster than America can strike. It's not a flawless system. Debt is a real concern, but this level of control keeps China climbing despite the economic war. Reason 4. China's global trade networks, too vast to contain. The Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, has linked China to 140-plus countries, with $1 trillion invested since 2013 in ports, roads, and railways. US sanctions didn't weaken these ties, they only strengthened them. By 2024, China's trade with ASEAN hit $911 billion, surpassing US trade in the region. Africa and Latin America rely heavily on Chinese loans and goods. Just look at the $60 billion China invested in Africa in 2022. The US tries to isolate China, but half the world is too dependent on its exports and infrastructure funding to cut ties. When tariffs hit, China simply reroutes trade. Russia and India bought 20% more oil from China in 2023 alone. As America's influence fades, China's trade web only expands. The global south increasingly chooses Beijing over Washington. While economic war strains Western alliances, China's deep global connections keep its rise on track. It's simply too entrenched to choke. Reason 5. China's technological ambition. A beast the US can't tame. From AI to 5G, China is charging toward the top. Despite US bans, Huawei's gear still runs networks in 60-plus countries. Chip restrictions sting, but China fights back with $30 billion in annual R&D funding, aiming for 70% domestic chip production by 2025. In 2023 alone, China filed 68,000 patents, double the US total. With 1.5 million STEM graduates each year, its talent pipeline is unmatched. The US tries to slow it down by cutting off high-end tech, but China is already building its own alternatives. Harmony OS, Huawei's answer to Android, now powers 300 million devices. The economic war may delay progress, but China isn't stopping. It's innovating around every blockade to keep rising. Reason 6, China's financial reserves, a $3 trillion safety net the US can't pierce. China holds $3 trillion in foreign reserves, compared to America's $700 billion. It's no contest. Tariffs drain cash, but Beijing props up its yuan and funds struggling firms to stay afloat. In 2022, China flexed its financial muscle by dumping $200 billion in US bonds. Meanwhile, the US is drowning in $34 trillion of debt and can't match that level of economic firepower. Even when exports dipped 5% in 2023, China's economy still grew 4.5%. But it's not just about cash, it's strategy. Beijing is hoarding gold and diversifying away from the dollar, insulating itself from Western financial pressure. The goal of the economic war is to bleed China dry, but with reserves this deep, China has the buffer to outlast US pressure and keep climbing. Reason 8. China's population and workforce. A numbers game the US can't win. With 1.4 billion people, China's 760 million strong workforce is triple the size of America's 260 million. Even as its population ages, that sheer scale powers its economy. Cheap labor built China's rise, but now it's shifting gears. 8 million college graduates enter the workforce every year, driving its tech and industrial sectors forward. Meanwhile, the US faces a labor shortage, with 3 million unfilled jobs in 2023. Sanctions may raise costs, but China's factories keep running, and its labs keep innovating. In 2024, China trained 500,000 engineers, compared to just 100,000 in the US. The economic war can't shrink China's workforce. It's the fuel keeping the country's ascent alive. Loving the content so far? Then don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and tap the bell icon so you never miss an update. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and share your take. Now, let's jump right into the main topic. Reason 9. China's soft power, winning hearts. Where the US can't, China isn't just expanding economically, it's winning global influence. As Africa's top lender, it has invested $170 billion since 2000, funding schools, roads, and hospitals. Confucius Institutes teaching Mandarin now operate in 140 countries. By 2023, 70% of African UN votes backed China, a clear sign of shifting loyalties. While the US pushes sanctions, China strengthens ties through aid, $160 billion to Asia in 2022 alone. Hollywood might dominate entertainment, but Chinese films and apps like TikTok are now global forces. The economic war may isolate China from the West, but the global South chooses Beijing's investment over Washington's lectures. Its influence keeps growing, fueling its unstoppable rise. Reason 10. China's resilience to sanctions, too tough to break. China has weathered economic attacks before and come back stronger. When the US crippled ZTE in 2018, China revived it. Huawei lost Google but still sold 70 million phones in 2023. Tariffs cost China $100 billion a year, yet in 2023, its GDP still grew 4.5%. It simply reroutes trade. Russia took 30% more Chinese exports in 2024, while domestic tech surged. Sanctions sting, but Beijing's control, subsidies, and state-owned firms absorb the impact. The U.S. wants to kneecap China, but decades of economic battles have made it resilient. The economic war may slow its pace, but not its climb. China is too entrenched, too adaptable, and too tough to break. And that's it, folks. 10 reasons why China's rise won't stop, despite the U.S.'s economic war. What do you think? Can the U.S. still win this battle? Drop your thoughts in the comments, subscribe, and hit the bell for more. Thanks for watching. See you next time.